There is a whole world of cinema to be discovered. You just have to overcome that 1-inch barrier known as subtitles. Welcome to that 1-inch barrier. Nicola Barry, Josh Barry, Kieran Griffiths. Gentlemen, welcome to Bong Joon-ho.
That'll never not be funny.
It is June, the month of June, and in the running off the success of our March Madness, where we watched the films of Mads Mikkelsen and we picked a film each, we're looking at the filmography of the patron saint of this podcast. The whole reason this podcast exists because of that one Oscar speech from Bong Joon-ho, South Korean master filmmaker. But we got 3 weeks of films coming up. Some films that we haven't covered on the podcast. We've done Barking Dogs Never Bite. We will be doing Parasite, and as Kieran said in the last episode, which thank you for listening and watching if you did, that we got 3 more of his Korean language films to cover in that, starting this week with Memories of Murder, which was his film following Barking Dogs Never Bite. So, Memories of Murder. Had we all seen it before watching it for this episode?
I had seen it once before.
I want to get your thoughts on that, but had you seen it?
No, this was the
first time?
And that's surprising because, I saw Parasite when it came out and loved it.
Yep.
And I love these sorts of films. I'm a big detective mystery, catch a serial killer type thing.
Yeah.
You think about things like Seven and Zodiac, both David Fincher films, but that kind of genre.
Yeah.
So, first watch for me, but surprising it took me this long.
Yeah. And this was my second watch. And I'd only watched it recently, actually. I probably only watched it for the first time a few years ago and loved it. But your first time watching it wasn't necessarily what we would call a successful outing, I guess. Was it Josh Barry?
It wasn't bad, but this film has a big response from everyone.
Yeah,
it's quite very well
critically acclaimed.
It's well
Criterion
loved.
release.
Yeah. And after Parasite, I know it got another
resurgence. Right?
It's
played a couple of times. It's playing again. Our friends at at Palace Cinemas. They're playing it in a couple of weeks. Yeah. Okay. So it's this. It's still quiet.
Yeah. The cinemas around here are onto us. Because they played the Raid.
They're listening to the show before we record it. How do you do that?
They played the Raid just after we watched the Raid.
Yeah.
And now they're playing Memories of Murder just after.
Yeah.
How nice would it be to actually watch it
before we But your first time didn't click.
It didn't click like I thought it would.
Sure.
And look, it's possibly one of those, I thought at the time, anticipation. Everyone's taught this is, a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And I just personally didn't gel with it like that.
Sure. So, and I loved it the first time I watched it. So I remember where we were talking about it. And
so I was, and I think we spoke about that. I was always keen to watch it again. Like, was I not in the mood, or so it was interesting doing a rewatch for this.
And we've spoken about that on the podcast before as well, about how much your mood and your mental space can impact your viewing experience. And I've spoken about how I've put off watching films for so long because I felt like, I'm just not in the right headspace for it.
And you don't want to ruin it.
And you don't want to, because you can't watch something for the first time again. There's been plenty of films where I've probably not got as much out of them because I just wasn't in that headspace.
For it.
And it's tough, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're people who watch a lot of movies. So it is hard, but it's good to be able to revisit it and sort of with a different perspective. And I think we change throughout the years, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
The movies don't change, but we do.
Yeah.
Who said that?
Profound. Not me. I definitely stole it from someone else. Let me have 1 second of my nugget of wisdom acclaim. But Memories of Murder, so taking place in the 1980s, and it's loosely based on a play called Come to See Me. And it follows 2 detectives, Park Do-man, who's played by common Bong Joon-ho collaborator, Song Kang-ho, who most people know as who played the father in Parasite.
But this was the first time they worked together.
This was the first time they had worked together, yes. So as he's Detective Park Do-man and Seo Ta-yoon, who lead an investigation into a string of rapes and murders taking place in Hwasong.
So based on a play?
So, loosely based on a play,
and that's based on the real...
Based on the real life, there was a serial killer in the 1980s in Korea that this is sort of loosely based on.
And sort of regarded as Korea's first sort of mass murder, serial killer in the 80s as well.
Yeah.
So And it's really interesting. I'll preface this by saying this is probably going to be a pretty spoiler-heavy episode.
I think it has to be.
It's very hard to talk about this film contextually, not just plot-wise, but without getting into spoilers. So,
especially about because in very many Bong Joon-ho films, there is a lot of social commentary about the state of Korea in this time as well, and how police work, and funding of police, and government work, and then that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, and talking about how it intersects with the real-life case as well. Yeah. So if you really don't want anything spoiled for you, probably turn.
I would recommend it. So don't watch this right now. Watch the film and then come back and listen to us.
Well, if that doesn't bother you, welcome back. Keep listening. So just to go straight off the bat with some spoilers, it is really interesting to watch a film like this that follows detectives trying to catch a serial killer for an unsolved crime.
Yes.
So much like David Fincher's Zodiac.
The
Zodiac killer. At the time of recording,
there's
still hope. It is an unsolved
case. Yeah.
So you're making a film about something that happened 20 years ago, that at the time was unsolved, and then since in 2019 they did actually solve
the murder.
They caught the guy. He was already in prison for another crime, and they sort of linked him with DNA. But that's a really interesting way to approach a murder mystery. Is that you. And if you're familiar with the case, right? Like I didn't know anything about these.
No.
But if you're in South Korea, I imagine most people know about this in the same way that most Americans probably know about,
John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy. Same way we know about Ivan Milat. The same way, you know what I mean? Like,
Martin Bryant,
exactly.
You watch Nitram, you know how that ends.
Yes.
So I imagine for most people in South Korea, they know, watching Memories of Murder, that they don't catch.
Yeah. But still, Bong Joon-ho manages to make somewhat of a police procedural out of it.
Yeah.
You're on the edge of your seat the whole time wondering how they're going to catch this person who they don't catch.
Yeah.
And it's riveting because it's about the characters more than it is about the case itself. And it's about...
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It's about... There's so many layers to this film, but it's about two different styles of policing. One that's very... That small town... I'm the sheriff, this is how I do it. We will absolutely beat up mentally disabled people to get confessions out of a more, what was what I was about to say, contemporary sort of detective who has these, in the 1980s, new age ways of investigating and interrogating and finding DNA and evidence and how they clash together. But then that spirals into why aren't the government funding the police in this area for this heinous series of crimes that, we have an incompetent police department who can't do anything about it. But then it's a pride thing as well. It's a class thing. It's the murder's class based. Is the killer, is he killing because he's works at what's the...
Like Stone,
quarry. That's right. Yeah. So there's so many interesting layers that only Bong Joon-ho, for me, can sort of weave into each other so seamlessly to make, like you said, we know the ending of the film kind of already. How do you make it interesting?
Yeah, and he did. And again, I think that's why Zodiac is such a great comparison, because it's about the nature of police work. It's about the toll that it takes.
Yes.
On the people who were there trying to, find it out. Slightly related, but I read something really interesting the other day about crime statistics in the US and about how the conviction rate for murders has dropped from something like 90% to 50% over the last 40 years.
Right.
Despite, the advances in technology and forensics and things like that.
Sure.
And a lot of what that comes down to is that they were just convicting people.
Right. Yeah.
And we see that here. There are multiple times when Detective Park is just pulling someone who he thinks could potentially be guilty and going, he's the murderer. Just so he can be like, case closed.
Tick it off the list. Yeah.
Whereas Detective...
Which is hard to watch, like in some of those scenes when they bring... Because it wasn't really... It was not an off comment. Like, they do bring a lot of mentally disabled people in because that's their assumption in the 80s, that there's this correlating link between those with mental disabilities doing sexual crimes and stuff, and they're just like, they don't know what they're doing, but they're sick, so they probably did it.
Yeah, and they're planting evidence. They're trying to find them guilty.
I think with that in particular, you can see that the cops find the narrowest of suggestions, like this mentally handicapped person was known to be following
women around
with these women around. So they're instantly like, it's got to be him.
Yeah.
Got to be him.
Yeah.
We don't quite have the evidence. Let's make that up because it's definitely got to be him.
They find someone hiding in a bush, like he's scared, and they find it and it's like, yeah, he was here, so he probably did that.
Yeah.
Like, why else would you be doing that other than,
they're taking them down into the basement of the police station, beating them to force out a fake confession.
Yeah.
Just so they can go, yep, tick that one off the list, get our face in the newspaper, look at us go.
I'm interested to see if there's a basement in the host and mother.
Oh yeah,
Man
true.
loves his basement.
He likes his basements.
And he loves making them look dank and creepy.
Someone check Bong Joon-ho's basement.
He's got a copy of Mickey 17 in there. That's what he's waiting to release it.
But then you've got Detective So, who's the complete opposite. He's come from Seoul. He's very, very modern and progressive in his police work. He's like, the documents never lie. That's a motif throughout the film.
Yes.
He's talking about, look at the hard evidence.
Oh my god, that document reveal towards the end is fantastic.
But he goes, let's look at the cold, hard facts of the case. We can't just be basing this off feel and off instinct. Whereas Detective Park is, he does his whole, I can just look someone in the eye and tell everything about
Shaman.
them.
Yeah, I love that.
The shaman eyes.
But they both get their sort of faith shaken at the end in terms of, one of them's looking in someone's eyes and goes, I can't tell. And one of them's looking at the document going, I can't believe what I'm reading. So they both very much have their faith shaken.
I like that flip.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And they sort of meet in the middle and cross over with their
And it takes a long time for that to happen though, because they are very much butting heads.
Trying to outdo on each other.
That's it. Because Park, for me, as a character, is a hard protagonist to like. And that's very intentional. But it's his pride that always gets in the way because he has such a high conviction rate. He's like, I'm a goddamn good cop. And then So comes in and he's like, I'm the shaman eyes. And then So comes in and is just kind of like, you guys suck.
Yeah, you do not
I'm the
know what
new
you're doing.
young buck. Watch me do this. And then he delays procedures to do proper investigations, which messes with Park. And he's just like, I would have had this done by now. I hate that this is the new way, ultimately. Yeah.
I think, though, like, before he gets there, the city cop,
Yes.
and you see the crime scenes and how they're
how they
not dealt with.
Okay.
Like, that is...
This brings up another point that Bong Joon-ho still manages to make this film very funny. When they're tripping down the bank,
hill.
and it happens twice.
I know. And
It's a weird thing to say about a film that's about trying to catch a serial killer. But it is funny.
That is
very
laugh
funny.
out loud funny.
And that's only one
As you
shot
see
too.
that in the
That
background.
one shot just
Yeah.
going around the crime scene.
Yeah.
Someone trips down the bank and Park's like, what the fuck are you doing? And then the camera goes around and then someone else falls down.
And he's commenting like, what are these guys doing? What are going on?
And then, there's a tractor that drives over the one footprint that they have.
As that's happening.
And he's yelling at the guy on the tractor being like,
It's funny. It's almost like, to me, there's like a bit of a Fargo element. It's this small town where nothing this significant has ever happened.
He's so clearly out of his element.
And no one knows what to do.
Yeah.
No one knows what to do. And it's fascinating to watch.
But it is, And I mean, you look at the Bong Joon-ho films that we have watched in terms of this, Barking Dogs Never Bite and Parasite, there's humour in all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting there. With our previous episode, we talked about Wild Towers. A lot of that humour does come from people's incompetence. And I think that's funny to watch in the sense of, like, we aren't police officers, we're not detectives, we don't know how to run a crime scene. But as a society, we put faith in those guys to do the right thing. But when they fuck up and we see it, it's kind of funny because we're like, you guys are idiots. But there's also this, what Bong Joon-ho does with his, like, especially the way he looks at classes and how society works, is that he goes, this is also a problem, remember? There's something bigger than this that it's stemming from that is a big issue. Yeah. And he makes you sort of reflect on that as well within the humour. Yeah.
I think there's almost a character who's in there purely for comedic relief in terms of Park's partner, Cho. So somehow Park, despite being completely incompetent, is the brains of this this duo.
The brains and the muscle.
Yeah, and then you've got Cho, who
and the eyes,
basically comes in to to beat the suspects down. That's his whole thing. Man loves kicking people.
Loves
fly kicking.
Yeah.
He loves a fly kick.
He always seems to do it after a healthy meal too. I love that just how they just eat and then he's like, I'm just going to kick someone.
The first time that happens.
A hearty meal.
I'm like,
and then
what is going on? He
But
comes down those stairs.
There is one scene where they're interrogating a suspect, and the suspect says something that the officers take offence to, and Cho's response is to run, jump onto the table, and then kick this dude square in the chest. It's like watching a Jackie Chan film.
It is.
In the middle of this investigation about a serial rapist and murderer.
It's so ridiculous.
But it doesn't hamper the tone in any way.
No.
That's the really
because
surprising
it speaks more about Cho as a person. He is just someone who's like, I'm sickened by these crimes. Park's told me this guy's probably guilty. I'm gonna mess this guy up by fly kicking him in the chest.
Oh, but they talk about that later in the film as well, and when they're sort of, So's kind of leading this investigation because he says there is another body out there, we just haven't found it yet. Like I've pieced this together. Yeah. There's this woman who went missing. She fits the sort of description for what the women who've been murdered kind of look like. Yeah. And when he's sort of looking for her, Park and Cho are talking and saying, Park's going, I went to a 2-year college and. So went to a 4-year university, and Cho goes, I had to do grade 9 4 times.
Yeah, that's right. It's very telling.
But it's funny, but it's like you've got these two small town incompetent cops.
No one else could be a cop. Like Cho had to do that job ultimately. You know what I mean? Like it's.
But they're trying to catch the biggest criminal in the country, basically. This massive national case. All the while you've got this background of civil unrest, so the police resources are being put towards riots and things like whatnot, that because this is Korea in the 80s and it's not the Korea of today. Yeah. So. And then you've got So, who's come from the big city, and he's going, this is how it's actually done. Even just stuff like, that guy, the mentally handicapped guy, he's got webbed fingers. There's no way you could be tying these intricate knots that the victims have been tied up with.
Because that's a common thing. All the women who are found have been tied up, and obviously horrible things have happened. But that's the commonality, and then it's just those little tiny things.
He just looks at his hands and goes, "Yep, he's innocent." They obviously can't do that. Yeah.
No.
He goes, "You're looking for someone who's intelligent and calculated and professional. There's no point wasting your time with these people who've got disabilities because they don't have the capacity to do what is being done to these women." Yeah. But it's that conflict and that crossover is where it becomes really interesting as once the professional starts to see that all his training and all his education, all his experiences counts for nothing because he can't catch the person.
Because he can't. Yeah. It's his identity crisis at that point, right? Like and the same thing happens on the other end of the spectrum for Park. Yeah. Is that he is like he's just battling his pride the whole time, going like, I could have had this done by now, but then he starts being like probably reflecting on all of those and be like, how many innocent people have I put away?
There's that telling scene towards the end where they've both pretty much got their head on the table.
The table,
and from the city is like, we just need anything.
That's it. How the script flips, right? Yeah.
And he says, "Wow, you've changed." I think he says, "Wow, you've changed."
He's saying they're going, I'll just arrest the next person I see, basically. Yeah. Because he just wants an answer.
They're fantastic together as well. Like Song Kang-ho, I think we'd love already. Like he.
But how? I mean. This time around, he's an amazing actor.
Incredible.
Like, there's little scenes where it just doesn't look like he's acting.
But he's just doing, it's his face. He just does so much with his eyes.
Exactly, and just the way he moves his head around, and I was just enamored.
I mean, without spoiling the context of it, the final shot of this film is possibly some of the best just eye acting. Yeah. Because it says a million things about what has happened previously. Like, I love
very similar to a particular shot in Parasite.
It is very similar to a shot,
with Song Kang-ho.
Yeah. Oh god, I love him.
But he's fantastic, and Kim Sang-kyung, who plays
they are brilliant. Yeah,
Detective So is fantastic as well, and they do play off each other really well as these kind of battling personalities. And we're talking a lot about these two detectives and the nature of their work. And not so much about the crimes themselves, but that's because the film
what the movie's about.
It's about them. It's not so much about
like
the killer.
It's like what you said at the beginning. It's like how do you tell the movie about a story we already know? Well, you focus on the people. Yeah. And that's exactly what this movie does well. But it doesn't make the crime aspect of it any less fascinating. We get some truly terrifying scenes where we see a shadowed version of the killer stalking these women or potentially killing these women. I think Parasite had it for a long time. One of the creepiest shots in history. And that is when the head pops up from the basement and you just see these two eyes darting. I think the scene in Memories of Murder where a woman is running away and it's this tracking shot going along the bushes and the killer emerges from the bush and it cuts to black. Might be the scariest scene of all time.
Yeah, so it sort of from her point of view, she's running through the field, through the rain,
and the killer and it's not that he just stands like he scurries. I just
like
got chills thinking about it.
Animalistic,
It's gross.
Like
terrifying.
Out of an embankment almost. He climbs out of the reeds.
That might be the scariest shot in cinema history, just contextually as well.
For me, and I thought you were going to say, is where his head
pops
out
up.
of the grass.
That is creepy too. That is so creepy. For me, I think it was more the jump scare aspect of it, and just knowing that, like, in a very morbid way, that was that woman's final moments. That's the last thing she may have like really properly remembered seeing. Terrifying. Bong Joon-ho can make a movie funny, fascinating, dramatic, and fucking terrifying.
It's why he's one of the best directors working today.
It's why he's our best friend.
Absolute friend of the show, and he's a master craftsman.
He genuinely is. And this was 2003.
This was his second film.
It's quite amazing.
We watched Barking Dogs and we all sort of went, it's good, but it's
a first film.
It's a first. To do this 3 years later.
It's astonishing.
You know,
incredible.
It's David Fincher going from Alien 3 to straight to 7.
7, right?
You know, from a film that's, I mean, there's obviously a lot of factors in Alien 3, but you know, to make your second film so incredible. And I mean, this is up there with Parasite.
I love this movie. I genuinely, this movie is fantastic. It is just, it balances so many different tones and genres and story arcs and just manages to coherently put them all together. And it's a slow-paced film. It's about 2 hours, 10 minutes. And it takes its time. This movie is not getting anywhere quick.
No,
but you stew in it.
I struggle with that.
Yes.
And I feel like even this second time round, it pretty much similar reaction for me to the first watch. Technically, you could easily call this film a masterpiece. Technically, and I've watched some sort of theories and
like breakdowns,
and his use of color and what he's done here and there, and it's unbelievable. But for me, that first half, both times I've just struggled through it. I think the back half of it really
it's
peaks, and
brilliant. It's brilliant. But when the document comes with the DNA results is one of the most.
That whole scene is
in the rain. Rain can be such a cheesy thing to add. It's like very not stereotypical cliche. It's very cliche thing, right? The rain is used so well in this film. It is. I just think not just from an aesthetic level, and he did the same obviously in Parasite too, which led to the flooding moment. But the way that rain is used as this thing that's sort of like you should be washing away, but there's still this muggy dirt everywhere. Like I kind of love it. It's just But I agree. The second half of the film is great.
But for me, there's only a few films I think where I struggle with myself almost with a film like this, because any cinephile loves this movie. It, as we said before, critically, it's Bong Joon-ho, it's technically, and then I'm a bit like, what's wrong
with? Well, it's funny because it's actually regarded. I was just reading here. It's actually really regarded as a cult film. So like people loved it, but no one watched it. No one really liked it. And fun fact, Michael Philippou of the Raka Raka, who made Talk to Me, The Boys, close personal friend. No, this is his favorite movie. We were talking the first time I ever met him. We spoke about this is his favorite movie of all time. Okay. So he very much like
man of good taste,
man of great taste. So it's funny how it is. You say cinephiles love it, and that's kind of true. I don't actually know many people who know and love this movie as much as people who are cinephiles do. Right? It's not necessarily reaching a mainstream audience, and I would be interested to see how it would play in a more, mainstream sort of general audience atmosphere.
Because there is a lot to there's a lot to pick up.
Sure.
There's a lot to get. I think a lot of it could easily go over, and I think
It's
a lot of it goes
dialogue.
over my head a bit.
It's a lot of dialogue to take in. Yeah.
And to pick up that fine balance between the humour, the almost slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like, should I be laughing at this right now?
Like, is this funny or is it just not good? But then you start to realise, it's all really calculated, meant to be.
It's just Bong Joon-ho, man.
It's funny because the more after the film, it grows on me.
Yeah.
But then both times watching it, I've just, as I said, struggled with the length of especially.
So about the 9th or 10th watch, you'll be like, this is
think
the best
about
film ever made.
Yeah. I think though there are films that are more enjoyable to talk about and think about than watch.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there are films that are more fun to unpack and sort of think about and ruminate with than to watch. Yeah. And that might just be one for you.
For me,
You enjoy dissecting it, but not necessarily the experience. Because as Nick said, it's very slow and meditative. Like, it does have its moments of action, but for the most part, it's very much a character drama. About these two separate detectives working their way through this same case. And it is a slow burn. And it ramps up towards the end. It's interesting you mentioned The Rain, and I'm going to keep talking about Seven and Zodiac because
absolutely.
they're very similar films.
Yeah.
In Seven, other than the ending, the whole time in the film, it's raining, it's dark. And I think outside of the first scene where they go and find the first body in the field, and the ending where he revisits that first location, for the most part, a lot of this film is at night, it's raining, it's dark, because they find that the killer strikes on nights when it's raining.
Yeah.
So a lot of the film takes place at times like that.
And because they do stakeouts and stuff as well, they're trying to find,
and it gives it this real sort of, dark, oppressive feeling, because you don't get any moments of light and of sun. It's always very dark. It's always very, wet and
I mean,
dreary.
it's like, and the start and finish are different, but the rest of the film's heavily saturated.
Yeah.
Like, the colours are really
overblown and sort of
and it's like a lot of cool tones throughout the film, whereas the intro and the outro is very warm colour palette.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's so deliberate.
Everything
Everything that Bong Joon-ho does in this film and all the films that I've seen of his is so calculated and meticulous. Very deliberate.
Yes. Yeah. Oh god, he strikes me as a filmmaker that there's no accidents.
I'll send you the link to this YouTube, and we can maybe put it on the bottom of this as well. About the colours that he uses.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's quite amazing, and how calculated he is with a green, blue, and a red colour.
Right. Okay.
And the way he uses it, and then the way he uses greys as well, and with grey walls, and then he's got every now and then them in a grey jacket, so they're blending into the.
Oh my god. He's incredible.
After watching that, I was like, wow.
Yeah. Never doubt Bong Joon-ho again.
That's right.
That's directors operating on a different level.
Yeah, on a totally different level.
There was one shot, and we see like these, I don't know if they're rice paddies or what they are, but like
the field that takes place, most stuff takes place in.
And there's a lot of scenes that take place around those. And there's one shot where the field takes up probably 2/3 of the screen, and you've got the strip of sky at the top.
Yeah,
and it reminded me of David Lynch at the end of The
Fabelmans. I thought you were going to say that.
When the horizon's on the bottom, it's interesting. When the horizon's on the top, it's interesting.
When it's in the middle,
it's boring.
Boring as shit.
That's true.
But it's that thing of, it's just this beautiful shot that another director wouldn't have done that way.
Yeah.
No.
But the way he's framed it so that this grass takes up almost the entire screen. With just this slither of sky at the top, because that's where most of these murders are happening. These women are found in these fields, and it's quite daunting to look at. It's just this field of grass, but it's just quite unsettling because we've seen that scene of the murderer, climbing out of the reeds almost. It's
fuck, that messed with me. Hey, I watch a lot of horror, and I'm quite a hardened man. That scares the shit out of me thinking about that shot. I like it's the same way the Parasite shot does. And I was going to say something, but I can't remember because now you scared me. So
I love that scene. It's I think one of the most beautiful shots in where they've got the mentally disabled guy in the field and the dad.
Yes.
And then they're kind of dragging him away, and it's that slow pan.
That slow pan to the dad is just... it's brutal.
Beautiful shot.
Yeah, but it's amazing, right? Yeah.
He's the first one that they kind of try and claim as the culprit.
Yeah.
And so they drag him out to the scene of the crime and make him
recreate
it for the news cameras.
Yeah. And recreate something he didn't do.
Yeah.
As well.
And they have one of the other cops dressed up as
the woman.
As the woman.
As the victim. And then in one of the final murders, you've literally got news cameras all around broadcasting the body of the victim while police are doing the work. You know, like you said, it comes down to how unprofessional the crime scenes were, and it makes you wonder, you know, would they have caught him sooner if they'd had, you know, better quality police work. Films like this also raise a lot of interesting questions about the morality of making entertainment out of real life crimes.
Absolutely.
You know, that got talked a lot about with the Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix series.
Well, Nitram had a lot to do with that as well.
I mean, we all enjoyed is the wrong word, as we always say.
I agree.
We all thought Nitram was a very good film.
Very well, and I'm going to say, in my opinion, was probably made in the best taste possible of that scenario.
It was very tactful, I think, as tactful as you can be. So for those who aren't familiar, Nitram is a film about the Port Arthur massacre, which occurred here in Australia.
Australia's largest and only mass shooting.
Yeah, because our government banned guns after it happened.
Who would have thought that would work? Who would have thought?
Let's talk about gun control. But that caused a lot of controversy because it's still pretty fresh in people's minds. It happened in the 90s?
90s, yeah.
Port Arthur. So it's 30 years ago now, but it's still, you know,
the
families of the
of
victims are still around.
Yeah.
You know, mine, Bryant, the gunman, is still alive in prison. And it's controversial, right? Especially when it's Australia's only incident like that. Yeah. It touches a nerve.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to tell these stories because at the end of the day, films aren't just entertainment, they're art, and art doesn't exist to make you feel comfortable.
It's exactly what, I can't remember the writer's name, it's Sean something, said that exact same thing. He said, if we don't tell these stories, you know, we don't know, people won't know how to change then. That's the thing. And then sometimes artistically expressing that point of view on it is a way to reach more people. Not everyone will watch the Port Arthur massacre documentary or read the book or watch the news, but they might watch the movie and they might go, okay, how do we stop this from happening? Yeah. Memories of Murder is an interesting one because it's definitely... It seems like one of those ones where you could have made up any sort of murder case to have this character drama, but there is something about it being based on a real life crimes that sort of adds an extra level of substance for me, in the sense it had me thinking about the incompetence of the police force in Korea in the 80s, or where, like you were saying, where those actual police officers, well, not actual, but police officers who could have done the job better were actually getting dispersed to, because that was more important to the government at that time. I don't think if it was based on a fictional murder, we wouldn't be talking about those things. You know. And Bong Joon-ho probably doesn't make that movie. Because he has something to say. He's a South Korean citizen. He's impacted by what happened in the 1980s in Korea. Well, you know, I'm not too well versed in it, but he obviously has something to say about it. So he did through this film, and I think it's an interesting thing, because there will be people who disagree with us, right? That's the whole thing. They'll be like, no, we shouldn't be, maybe for lack of a better word, exploiting real life crimes for that thing. But again, the key word used for is like, we didn't enjoy Nitram. That's the whole thing. And there's elements of this film that are enjoyable from a filmmaking perspective, but I didn't walk away from this movie like going like, man, I just love. I was walking away going like, this is a tough film to watch. And that closing scene to me encapsulates everything this film's about. It was never about the crimes. It was about the people who were investigating the crimes. And that last shot and that last scene encompasses all of that, which is one of the best cinematic endings ever for me. Like, I love the ending of this film.
It's about not being exploitative.
Yes.
Right? Like, you're not trying to take advantage of people, especially it adds another layer of complexity with it being, at the time, an unsolved murder.
Yes.
So, I mean, this was made in 2003, and then, as we said, in 2019, they caught the real killer, who was already in jail for a different crime. But to make a film about an unsolved murder is... it's pretty full on.
For sure.
In the same way as Zodiac, and I think, as we've talked about, when you know the ending, you kind of have to approach it differently. But at the end of the day, these were real people with real families. And I think that definitely hits you with this film when you do see the victims being grabbed off the street sort of thing. You go, shit, that really happened to someone. And it makes you feel weird things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it gets really hard to think about
and the difference is that a filmmaker like Bong Joon-ho wants you to feel that. That's the difference. Whereas you brought up the Ted Bundy, that Zac Efron movie, probably not so much. Right?
No.
To me, that was just more like the guy just was like, the Ted Bundy story is interesting. Let's try and find a way to make it. And we have to get Zac Efron to do it.
The Jeffrey Dahmer, Evan Peters series.
Still haven't watched it. Couldn't give a shit. To me, it's not like it's saying anything that I don't already.
It didn't seem like it had anything to say beyond,
But that's Ryan Murphy Productions for you.
I actually did like that.
Oh, sorry, Josh.
I like that series. I did like it. He's amazing in it.
Evan Peters is great. I think he's a phenomenal actor.
He is a phenomenal actor.
Did you not find it a bit more exploitative?
It's definitely,
like this,
yes. Much more than
But Josh is a psychopath. He can disconnect.
It starts getting into that real realm of true crime, torture porn almost. Like it's, we enjoy seeing these really, awful taboo things.
And if you want to really get angry at people about it, get angry at the news about it. They're doing 24-hour cycles of this fucking doom and gloom shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's no one's innocent of having this media, injected into us. And sure, watching a movie about it's optional, but watching the news is also optional. Like what we choose to consume is completely up to you. So it's how you react to it's a completely different thing as well. So
Isn't
what you do is you start a podcast and have incredibly educated conversations about it
with the three of the most qualified people you know.
Three of the most qualified, whitest dudes you've ever met.
Hey, I'm from a different country.
Your accent did change actually between episodes. What the fuck?
I've spent enough time with you bogans now. But isn't it great that we can watch a film like this and it generates these discussions?
It's fantastic.
I think we all love watching entertaining films, but I think the films that really hit home most with us are the ones that make us think and feel these things and go, let's think about real life cases and the police work and the victims and the discussions around that.
But it takes a special filmmaker to do it. And that's why we all felt the same way with Parasite. That's a film that deals with a lot of class issues in Korea. You still leave, and we will talk about it later on, but that leaves you with the stirring sort of feelings. So I'm excited to see what The Host and Mother sort of does with that as well, because I haven't seen those two films. So
and I don't know what Mother is about. The Host is a bit of a creature feature, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. But apparently that's got quite a lot to say. Apparently it's a very satirical look at about how Korea may respond to disasters and things like that.
Right. So he's a very switched on director.
Snowpiercer is very much that as well. Like how would the different classes react to the literal end of the world? You know what I mean? Like
Snowpiercer. Not that I want to go on too much of a tangent, but Snowpiercer definitely isn't as subtle as...
No, but he also knew he was making a movie for American audiences.
He went, this is my first English language. Those Americans, I don't think...
He just had a producer sitting there in a chair all day, and Bong Joon-ho would film a scene and then turn around to the producer, and the producer would be like, dumber. Needs to be dumber. And you guys can't be offended because I am the dumbest one on this podcast. I can say that. Okay, you got a problem? Send me a DM.
Good for the engagement.
I'm being purposefully controversial, much like many of your American newscasters.
Anyway. You can't cancel me. I'm deliberately trying to get cancelled.
You can't cancel me. I have no fans. No one cares.
So what do you think on both viewings, Josh? What was it that didn't work for you, do you think?
I think it is sort of like look, I've been toiling with it because I don't know. And after watching it the other night, a lot of me was like, trying to see what other people are saying, like why.
Oh, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Reading reviews, being like, someone validate my feelings.
No. I wanted someone to say this is why it's really amazing.
Right.
But everyone's a bit like, it's an amazing thriller, and I'm like,
so we haven't convinced.
But I know.
But, no, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah.
I think I did struggle with that kind of comedic. Like a kind of
the tones,
the silliness of it almost. And I think, especially the first time, and maybe that's kind of tainted, but I'm like, hang on, why are they being so silly?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? But now,
I get that.
then you look into it and it's like, well, this is actually what they were dealing with.
Yeah, they actually would have had a guy there whose job it was to basically just come in and beat the shit out of you know, potential suspects. And he was a complete psycho. You know, oh man,
people falling down the banks at the crime scene. You're like, well, shit.
The bit of incompetence that really just tickled me was when they find one of the victims and there's no evidence to be found.
Yeah.
And the detective from Seoul, he goes, you know, we've got this lead about how he only goes after victims wearing red at nights when it's raining, and every night when it's raining that there's been a murder, there's this song playing on the radio.
Someone calls in to request it.
So we need to go and find this guy who's requesting this song. And Park is like, it's a load of shit. There was no hairs found at the crime scene. There's always going to be hairs left behind. Clearly, he's hairless.
Yeah, that's...
And he's like, what do you mean, bald? And he's like, no, like completely hairless. Like downstairs
that's downstairs as well.
And so while one of them's
think of a Buddhist monk
shaved
downstairs.
So he's like, one of them's off researching this genuine lead, and Park's going to every sauna in the city just staring at dudes in the dick, looking like...
That scene
he literally pulls one guy over at the lockers like,
that
hey,
scene
mate,
is
like,
hilarious.
Can you turn around.
Him eyes.
Yeah. And then the kid walks
And
past.
the kid walks by. And that's the whole thing. He's supposed to be like, God damn it. Like, this is the most incompetent thing.
Like, this is this town's best detective. And he's going around looking for dudes who shave their junk because clearly that means that's why there was no hair.
They're a fucking serial murderer. Yeah.
But I think I sort of saw reading afterwards, that's a big commentary on the matriarchy, and because that's the woman detective who comes up with the actual legitimate.
True.
She's like,
she's actually probably the best detective in the thing, but no one takes seriously.
All the guys are just like, and he hands her back the teacup, and
that's a great point. Yeah,
it's like, it's a great idea. By the way, get us more coffee. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Imagine being the woman that they set up as the bait too. How terrifying that would be. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah. What a movie.
Well, I did read in the real life case, because the thing about you know, the only strikes during the rain and women wearing red.
Sure.
I don't know if that was true, but that was sort of, you know, peddled as information during the real life case. Female cops were going out,
right?
Basically putting themselves out as bait.
Yeah.
To try and catch this guy, like putting on a red coat and going out at night, you know, with the gun in the holster, being like, okay, if he's going to get me, but I'm going to get him.
I'm going to get him first.
Because
that's terrifying.
That's terrifying. Yeah. Okay, there was something recent I watched that had a similar thing where they were doing that, but I can't remember. But if you the color thing I was talking about, if you actually on a rewatch, if you watch, not many of them are actually found in red.
Oh my God, I haven't even thought about that. I'm an incompetent police officer. Jesus.
And the colour that they're all in is white.
Oh,
interesting.
They're all in like white undergarment, and
that's right, because the underwear plays a big part of it. Oh my God.
The colour thing for me really.
I'm so excited to watch this.
We'll put a link in this description as well, because it's a really good.
That's fascinating.
In-depth look at how he uses colour. Yeah.
Again, how many films? You know, would you watch that you then want to go and watch a breakdown on the colour theory behind it?
That's right.
Not many.
No,
but if it's made by Bong Joon-ho, I goddamn will. Because like you've both said, he's operating on another level as a filmmaker.
I saw a little interview with him, and the guy said, I've read that you never do any cover shots.
Oh, wow, interesting, yeah.
I guess for anyone who
everything's
doesn't know...
deliberate,
Yeah, everything's deliberate. Normally a director would have another camera set up in case something goes wrong, and then they can like pull from that one.
Yeah.
He never does that, and he said, why? And he said, because that's my job. I'm the director.
I love that.
And
I love him.
And he fully storyboards everything, and then that's just the shot.
Him, do you know what I would die to see? Him and George Miller having a conversation about their way they've... Because George Miller's quite similar. Like I've listened to a few interviews with Furiosa being out recently. It's like, that same deal of just so deliberate and everything. That story, yeah, exactly.
Let's get rid of actors on actors. Give me directors on
Oh, we
directors.
need that so much more. So much more.
Just so I can have...
I really felt the character. I know, you like every other actor. Give me more directors.
What I want to see is David Fincher and Clint Eastwood.
Get Clint before he goes. That man's looking old.
Clint is notorious for one take, and not in terms of he's planned everything. Man's just old and he's got shit to do.
Yeah, he's just like...
So he goes, one take, now we're done, let's move on. Whereas David Fincher is notorious for doing 100
the Kubrick style of filmmaking. There's I can't remember who the actor was, but he talks about how Clint Eastwood would direct him, and he would just sit there and the thing, he'd look at the mirror, he's like, all right, go ahead. And then they do it, he's like, all right, next one. And that's it. And he's like, do you want to do another one? He's like, no.
I feel like that might have been...
It's
Clint Eastwood doing Invictus?
It was Tom Hanks talking about Sully, I believe.
Because Clint
Eastwood
did
do Invictus.
I feel like
Clint
I've
Eastwood
heard,
did do Invictus.
Yeah, I've heard a similar story of Matt Damon talking about Invictus.
Yeah, it might have been the same.
Yeah, Matt Damon being like...
But he pulls it off. Clint Eastwood.
I think I've got a better one in me.
Yeah, Clint's like, we ain't got time for a better one. I've already set up for lunch.
Oh, that would be a fascinating chat.
But
there we go.
Bong seems a different,
He's just it's a mastery. It's an art form. It's he's incredible.
They're people working with this as an art form and a craft.
Yeah.
And that's why we've dedicated a whole month to this guy, because he is worth it.
Because he deserves it.
Should we go into star ratings?
Let's do it. Josh? Let's go lowest to highest.
Yeah, probably. Look, it is hard for me to give it less than 4 stars.
Is that because you think it deserves it, or because you feel you have to?
That's a great question.
I feel it deserves it on a technical level.
Sure.
It's beautiful looking for, technically, as I said before, I think it's you could call it a masterpiece. It's pretty easy. But on my enjoyment of it, I'd lean more to a 3.5 on it.
Yeah, so meeting in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
A 4.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I gave it a 4 on the first viewing, and I would give it a 4.
I've done that before too, though. There's films where I have not necessarily liked watching, but you can't deny that they're really well made, and that gets a 4-star, but it could have been a 5-star.
Yeah,
maybe I totally got what you mean. Yeah. Plus star rating, so fuck you, we do what we want.
4.5.
Yeah, wow.
For me, I mean, I love these sorts of films. Anything that's sort of, really character focused. Detective, drama, mystery, thriller, crime. That's my jam. Yeah. There's a reason 7 is my favorite film.
Yeah, I mean, looking at 7 or Zodiac, I just find those films much more engaging to me and much more intense.
They're definitely faster paced.
I guess they're faster paced.
Even Zodiac, which is a longer film.
Yeah.
Zodiac's what, 2.5?
It's almost 3 hours.
Long. It doesn't feel it though, because it is so gripping.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a lot slower.
Yeah.
But it is
very methodical. Yeah.
Very thoughtful as well. You'll get scenes of just sort of the fields. Yeah. And that'll just be the shot. Yeah. There's nothing happening. It's just the field.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more contemplative. But I think it gripped me.
Yeah.
I by the time it was finished, I went, holy shit, that's been 2 hours. It just flew by.
Yeah.
For me.
I wished I had had that.
Yeah. But how many times have we all been there? Though,
Yeah.
You walk out of a film, you might have gone to the cinema to see it with a few people, and they're all going, "Oh, that was the best thing ever. That was amazing." And you go, "What did you watch?"
Yeah.
Or you're like, "That was incredible," and everyone else is like,
"Yes,
no, it wasn't.
It wasn't that great." Yeah.
We've all had those films where you go onto Letterboxd afterwards and you're looking at the scores and you're going,
"What?
Am I on the wrong film?"
Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Yeah.
I remember walking out of that and everyone's like, wow, and I was like, yeah, I get it.
Moonlight for me.
Wow, that's a big one. That's way more controversial actually.
Did not move me in the slightest.
Interesting. I do need to watch that again.
Actually. I watched it at home after it won the Oscar, and I just went, it's all right. La La Land is better.
Well, that was the true winner of the night. It was the first one read. So
it was the moral winner. But it's frustrating, right? Because you feel like you're missing something.
Yeah, for me, that's been the frustration with this one. And like I said,
you're about to go on your own detective investigation mystery to find out what's making you click.
I have been.
Josh is gonna beat up a mentally disabled guy to find out why.
It's going to take me 14 years for the truth to come out.
We'll see you all on episode 247 of That 1 Inch Barrier when Josh.
When we do our first retrospective screening, we'll watch it again. And figure it out. I'm a 4.5. I'm a 4.5 as well. I'm so close to a 5 on this, but I agree. There's moments where the pacing does teeter on a little bit too long for me, but Kieran said everything that I wanted to say about it. It's fantastic in that. I'm a crime mystery film buff as well. And
Can we think of anything? I mean, I keep bringing up Seven and Zodiac.
No, but
Can you guys think of anything else?
Nah, they're the best comparisons because there's not many great crime procedurals. That's the thing. A lot of them are unfortunately just 1 hour long TV shows of some sort of acronym. So
it is very similar to True Detective.
Yeah, True Detective would be another one. The first season definitely,
where it's obviously very character driven in terms of two
it's less
different
about
personalities butting heads.
It's less about the crimes and more about the people. Yeah, that's probably
I love that. All these other ones we're talking about, I love.
Yeah, this just doesn't.
No, it just doesn't.
What is it?
I mean, I wouldn't trust anyone who doesn't like the first season of True Detective.
That's true. It's so fantastic.
That's the best season.
That's a great comparison, actually. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, that's the first episode of Bong Joon-ho. I'm going to keep putting the same inflection on June for the next, with my Australian accent where you don't know if I'm saying June or June.
We're going to follow this up with Bong Joon-ho, where we talk about Denis Villeneuve's June, or what it would have been like if it was directed by Bong Joon-ho.
Fantastic film, definitely recommend it. But next week, we'll be hitting up The Host, 2005-6 film, I believe.
You started that with so much confidence.
And then I realised I shouldn't have said the year because I didn't know it off by heart.
The Host is 2006.
Yeah, one of them was right.
That's his third film.
Hell yeah. Which none of us have seen, which we're very excited to break down. But if you are going to listen to that, you can probably watch it on YouTube with That 1 Inch Barrier on YouTube and also Spotify and Apple Podcasts where you can listen to the show. But make sure you're subscribing and liking and following and all that. And you can check us out on That 1 Inch Barrier on Instagram. Until next week, Bong Joon-ho.
Thank you guys. We will see you all next week.
Bye, Joon-ho.
More terrible pronunciation.